Welcome to the final section of topic B in the exam unit for Health and Social Care, Unit 1. Now, what we're going to do in this session, we're going to look at B6, which is factors affecting human growth and development. And we're going to go through this in a very short sort of session just to explain the key fundamentals of what's going on. To go alongside this pack, you're definitely going to need your pack, the resources pack, for dealing with human growth and development. You also need some of the supplementary activities. There's some case study sheets which you may want to use. There's some examples of stress tests as well, which will be helpful to have. They will be attached to the email that your teacher would have sent along with the PowerPoint slides as well. So let's get stuck in. So the first thing we need to think about, what does it mean when it says major life events that affect development? What is that about? Now, the first thing you can see here is that as we go through life, we go through loads of key changes, key events, and we've seen a lot of this already through the development of pies, through changes in our body, and this just carries on with that idea. So what happens as we go through life, there are what we call predictable events and unpredictable events. Now, a predictable event is something that we can generally expect to happen over the course of our lifetime. So for most people, we can expect that we're going to go to school. We can generally expect that we're going to move out of our parents' house. We're generally going to expect that we can get a job, that we'll retire one day, that we might have a family of our own. These are predictable events, things that we can probably guess are going to happen to us during our lifetime. Now, these can all be quite significant changes. They can have very positive effects. They can have very negative effects. All of these obviously are things that we have to adapt to. And if you think back to some of the stuff we looked at with attachment and the work of Bowlby and resilience, you know, the better our attachment, our bonds, the more likely we can be able to deal and manage with that stress. Now, the unpredictable events are things that we may not expect. So these are sort of unpredictable. These happen without much planning, without prep. The current corona climate is a good example of this, an unpredictable event where, you know, work has changed, life has changed, routines have changed. So unpredictable events are ones that we cannot predict are going to happen, and we cannot plan for them. So again, these can have positive effects on health. They can also be quite negative, but that's what we're going to look at. So ultimately, the main thing is that this is all about stress, essentially. So major life events really is the foundation is stress and the impact of stress. So let's get some examples of some of the predictable and unpredictable life events. Now, there's a big table in your pack which covers these predictable events. So I'm just going to quickly talk through some of them, just to give you a sense of what's going on. And then obviously you can add these definitions into your pack. And what I would recommend, if you want to either follow as I talk through them, or pause the screen now while they're here and write them in. But we'll just quickly explain what these are. So the first one we have is starting school or nursery. Now, this is a predictable life event. We know at some point we're going to start school. Now, the change that takes place is that we have to learn to make new friends. We have to cope with spending our day in a new environment. Imagine a little 5-year-old starting school for the first time, having spent the first 5 years of life at home with mums and dads. So it's a predictable change. We know it's going to happen, but you can feel unsafe. You feel withdrawn from others. You might lose support from your parents. You might find it hard to make friends. So starting school can be a challenge. The second one is changing and beginning employment. So again, we all know at some point we're going to get a job. But what is tricky with this is choosing a work role and having an income from employment. And people might feel pressured by the demands on time, on mental energy, finding it difficult to adapt to the new routine, to losing their lifestyle. So that's a big change that can take place. The third one is leaving home. Now, again, we all know at some point we're likely to move out. We're not going to live in our parents' house forever, or we don't expect to live in our parents' house forever. So we move out of home. So we achieve independence. We begin to control our personal environment. And we begin to be able to, it helps us to cope with a new situation. We feel pressured by new tasks. You move into a new home, you live by yourself. You then become responsible for paying the bills, for doing the shopping, cleaning the house, fixing things that get broken, managing resources in your home. So this becomes your responsibility, and that can be quite a stressful thing, because suddenly it's a lot of pressure, a lot of work for you to take on, which previously, if you live with parents, a lot of that would have been covered by those individuals. And again, that can be a source of stress. Leaving prison can be a predictable life event, and again, I think going into prison probably slightly unpredictable, but a predictable life event is leaving prison. So if you've been in prison, you get to leave, and what that can do is, obviously that's really great. You get freedom, you've got choice, you're free from prison, but you lose your routine. You may lose your structured environment. You have lost all your support, whether that's official support through the prison, it could be unofficial support through friends in prison. There can be issues with finding housing, gaining an income, coping with discrimination. So there's lots of negative impacts of leaving prison, and obviously coming out onto the streets. Next we have marriage. Now marriage is about making attachments, experiencing intimacy. So a lot of the factors we covered in emotional development, in social development, in our pies discussion. And I think, again, mentioning back to Bowlby is really important. Having an attachment helps with resilience. So marriage is a really important, positive, predictable life event. But there can be some negatives too. So again, feeling threatened by intimacy and sharing possessions, the loss of independence. These can be possible sources of stress. Then we have parenthood. So again, having children, you build more attachments, you learn new parenting skills, your role changes. That can all be positive and stressful. But some of the problems that come with this is disruption to previous lifestyle. You lose all, if not most, of your free time. You get new demands on time and energy. You're always feeling tired. You don't have as much money. Again, as a relatively new parent, I experience a lot of these. So again, there's a whole new range of stresses that can be brought in with parenthood. And then lastly, retirement. So again, we all know at some point in our lives we're going to finish work. So we begin to control our own life. We become disengaged with work. That's a positive experience. But we might lose our previous role. We lose contact with colleagues. We may find it difficult to establish a new career or a new lifestyle, or to fund that. You're not working, you may not have as much money, you may not be able to do as much as you want. So these are all some of the challenges that come with retirement. But as you can see, this whole screen here, these are all life events that we can generally predict are going to happen. We are going to experience this. Aside from prison, which isn't necessarily on everyone's kind of to-do list, but generally most of these we will experience in our lifetime. Obviously, I know, as again, just while we're here, speaking about marriage and parenthood, people can choose, they don't want to get married, they don't want to have children, so they may not have to deal with these. But again, these are predictable. We can plan for that. On the opposite side, we have unpredictable life events. These are things that we cannot plan for, we don't prepare for, we don't know are necessarily going to happen. So the first one, birth of a sibling. Now, I know you're thinking, oh, how do you not know that you're going to have a baby? Now, that again, as an adult, having a child and parenthood is a predictable life event, as we've seen on the previous slide. This unpredictable one is more to do with children. So children would experience this unpredictable life event. So not knowing that they are going to have a sibling born. Obviously, they're not involved in the process. They just become aware of it potentially when a new baby arrives home. So they have to learn to make new attachments. Now, this is positive, but it can cause jealousy, rivalry. It can lead to emotional tension because of the changes in the roles of the family. Older children or the older child might lose attention from parents, and that can be a source of stress for them. Redundancy is the next one on the list. So again, that's you lose your job without much involvement or choice. So losing your job there, you have to learn to adapt to a new level of income, to changes in your lifestyle. Now, the stress, the negative stress that can come with this, is refusal to accept change. You might be angry. You could face depression. You could sort of experience failure to cope with the change. And again, redundancy is an unpredictable because it's one that you don't have much control in it or say in it. It's kind of put upon you. Now we have serious illness and illnesses. That should be serious illness. I've realised there's a sort of slight error here, but basically significant illness. Now this isn't just feeling a bit cold or a bit fluey or just a bit unwell. This is probably more substantial long-term illness. So this could be, obviously you might learn to adapt to that. You might learn to change the way you're working or living or your environment, and that could be positive. But the problem is, you can face, again, anger, depression, failure to adapt to a disability or an illness or a change in your circumstances. Grief, in some respects, we felt, you no longer are healthy or in good health. So you could feel or experience grief. So there are lots of negative impacts of this. We also have divorce. So again, learning to cope with a new lifestyle. Again, if you separate from your partner. Now that can lead to resentment, it can lead to depression, grief, the relationship falling apart, failure to adapt to a new lifestyle, possible financial hardship. These can be all some of the problems with divorce. And the image here on the screen, I particularly want to focus on it because of this guy here. So while we're talking about divorce in a general sense, how it can affect people, we also need to think about that it can have an impact on children. So there are negative impacts and stress impacts of divorce on all members of the family, not just the adults involved. And last but not least, we have bereavement. Now bereavement is obviously, again, the death, loss of a partner. So again, learning to cope with the loss of someone or a new lifestyle or new way of life. If you've lived with someone for a long period of time and you've got very established routine and lifestyle and relationship and dynamic of the family, to lose someone would change that quite significantly. So again, failure to adapt to that new lifestyle, that could be a source of potential stress and negative impacts of it. Also thinking back again, the kind of way this all connects, the emotional attachment, connection, your resilience might be lost if your main source of support has vanished or in this case died. So these are unpredictable life events. So let's put some of this into practice. So I've got 5 case studies that are going to cover on the next slide. And what we'll do is we'll think about what's going on in their life and what are the predictable and what are the unpredictable life events that could be faced in each. And we'll just try and have a think together. So here's our first case study. This is the work of Jason. Now, if you want to take a minute to pause it, have a read, have a think, I'm more than happy for you to do that. Just to also click pause on the video. But we'll just go through this together and we'll think about what's going on. We'll think about what are the predictable and unpredictable events. So Jason has just been released from prison. He was given an 18-month sentence for possession of ecstasy with intent to supply. So that first, off the bat, we know from the previous slide that being released from prison is a predictable life event. So obviously he would have known he was going to be released from prison, particularly in 18 months' time. So that's a predictable life event right there. Going to prison, obviously, probably was an unexpected one. So going to prison wasn't predictable. Actually, I'm just going to change that from these big squiggles to a tick. That would probably be easier. Now, Jason's girlfriend was 7 months pregnant. So again, pregnancy, we can generally predict it. While serving the sentence, she gave birth to a baby boy. In the final months of his sentence, Jason and his girlfriend had an argument and she stopped visiting him. So again, that would probably, the breakdown of a relationship, probably coming under the unpredictable. Since his release from prison, Jason hopes to gain access to see his son. Upon his release, he has nowhere to live and is currently staying on his friend's sofa. His friend is also a drug dealer. Now again, that's not a predictable, unpredictable life event, but it does kind of hint that he, could be drawn back into it. But again, the idea about maybe the nowhere to live, that would probably be unpredictable. You don't plan to be unable to live with anyone or homeless. Okay, so if you get the sense here of what we can see as predictable, lots of these things are going to cause him stress, but some of the ones that we can potentially plan for, others are ones we cannot expect. Okay, so that makes sense, hopefully. Okay, here's our second case study character. So this is Ollie. Now, Ollie's 4 years old. His family have recently moved to a new town, and he's due to start learning at a new school. So in terms of predictable life events, we've got new school. Potentially moving house, moving out is a predictable. I mean, in some respects, you know, we potentially know at some point we may not live in the same house forever. Ollie has come home from school for the last few days feeling very upset and not his usual self. So this is part of that predictable life event, change in situation. Ollie's parents have also just had another baby. Now, for the parents, that would be a predictable. Again, they would know they are having a baby, so that's predictable for the parents. But obviously, we're focusing more on Ollie here, so this would be an unpredictable for him. He doesn't know or didn't have any input or involvement in this, so it's an unpredictable event for him. And therefore, parents have less time to play with him, and again, part of what the unpredictable event would be. We then have case study 3. This is Raheem and Stacey. Now, they've recently got married, so marriage is a predictable life event. They've never lived together before. They're due to move in after their honeymoon, so this is context, not really a predictable, unpredictable event there. They both left large houses and moved into a smaller house between both their places of work. So this is, again, moving house is a source of stress. As a result, they're isolated from both friends and family. That could potentially come under that unpredictable. You know, you don't plan to predict that you'll be isolated from family and friends. So again, lots of elements in here that could be source of stress. I mean, moving house, as we mentioned before, we know as a predictable event, you're going to move house, but it's full of stress in doing so. Moving together, again, living with someone for the first time, that could be a source of stress. Because you know if you've not lived with someone, you don't know their habits, their routines, and again, that can be quite stressful. Okay, we then have case study 4. So we've got Nick and Jack, who have been dating for 3 months. They both still live at home with their parents, and Jackie has a good job working in sales, and Nick is working to be an electrician. Jackie's discovered that she's pregnant, so pregnancy is generally a predictable event. We know at some point in life most people will have a pregnancy or become a parent, but in this context it will be unpredictable because it's not planned. It's an unpredictable or unplanned pregnancy. Nick and Jack have decided they want to keep the baby, but now face a number of decisions. So parenthood is a predictable event here, but stuff, you know, how they're going to live. So they're going to have to move out. They're going to have to live together. They're going to have to find a way of paying the bills. So these would all be predictable in most cases. You know you're going to go through them, but again, generally, because this is all unplanned, it would probably kind of border into unpredictable. And then last but not least, case study 5. So some of you may find yourself in this position. Simon is 17. He's passed his A-levels and he's going to university. So these are all predictable. You know you're going to go to school. He's passed his A-levels. He's planned to go to university. And he's moving. That's a predictable event. He's planning to go to a new city. He's also moving into halls. So again, he would have had some say and choice in that. So it's a predictable event. He will have 8 new flatmates that he's never met before. Now, that comes as part of the halls, but again, I suppose there is that unpredictable. You don't know who you're going to live with. There's also lots of stresses that involve, you know, living away from home, living away from parents, living on your own, moving to a new town, a new city. So lots of stress here. Now, as I say, some of these are planned and you can predict them and you know they're likely to happen. Some might be unpredictable, but ultimately the general theme of all these case studies is all of these will be a source of stress. They will all cause you to experience stress. So what does stress do to you? So have a think, again, just for a few minutes. You can pause the video if you need to, and try and think about how your body would respond to stress. and then we're going to add some notes to the pack. Now, hopefully you've had a chance to have a think. So let's go through the ideas to put into your pack. And again, feel free to pause the video at any point just to make the notes into your pack and resources. So here we go. Now, if you've got your electronic textbook, page 54 to 56 will give you this information. You've got a little bit more detail there if you want to read over some of these materials. But these are the behavioural and biological effects of stress on the human body. Now, behavioural effects is the way we behave, the way we act, the way we respond to stress, and how we would manage it or deal with it. It's almost coming on that bit about resilience and how we adapt and how we respond. The biological responses is how our body reacts. So when we're stressed, what impacts that have on the body? So we'll go through these very quickly. So the first bit is over or under eating. So stress can have a big impact on our appetite. Now, it can cause you to overeat, stress eat, and again, it might be that you might end up with eating more sugary things or high energy foods or picking on chocolate, and that could be linked to other elements like being tired or kind of looking for some sort of pleasure or joy to kind of balance the stress. It can also lead to undereating. You completely lose your appetite. It can lead to excessive smoking or drinking, again, as coping mechanisms, just trying to calm yourself down or respond to a stress that's put upon you. You can lead to sleep deprivation, so lost sleep. Motivations also, again, if you don't sleep, you less energy, less focus, less drive, and you can lose motivation. You can be argumentative or irritable. So again, you may be short-tempered and not really willing to talk to people or negotiate things. And lastly, it can lead to anxiety attacks. You can have panic attacks, stress attacks because of that pressure on your body. Now, biologically, there are lots of other effects on here. And again, some of you will be relieved I haven't got any that many moving images or little GIFs for some of these. But it can affect your immune system. So your immune system becomes weaker, you're more susceptible to illness, you're more likely to get a cold. This can also be after a long period of high stress, that once you leave that stressful situation, you can often become unwell, because it's almost like your body's been running at such a high pace that you stop, it calms down, and then illnesses can be like to build up. It can lead to high blood pressure. So you can have higher blood pressure because of the stress. You can develop stomach ulcers, which again, inflamed acid in the stomach can lead to those. It can lead to bowel problems, stomach upset. Probably the tamest image I can find for stomach issues. It can lead to tension headaches, migraines, muscle pain. So again, the stress can manifest itself in lots of physical ways. It can lead to a loss of sex drive. So again, your libido decreases because of the stress, and also it can have an impact on menstrual cycles and menstruation. So it can either trigger menstruation, it can stop it, it can disrupt it. So stress can have lots of different impacts, and again, it will affect people differently. But these are some of the behavioural and biological responses. And again, if you can add these to the table in your pack. And last but not least, just a few more points on stress. Now, this will be linked to some of the attachments that were in the email, so you need to take a look at these. But the first is the Holmes Readjustment Ratings Scale. It's a bit of a mouthful, but this scale is used to measure levels of stress. And all you need to do, if you look at the list, I've got a slightly compressed version here, but you'd go down the list and you'd start to think about what have you experienced. And the idea is, in the past year, what have you experienced? So, all these events are kind of listed and ranked from high to low stress. So you've got death of spouse, divorce, marital separation, prison, death of a family member, injury, marriage, being fired at work. So there's a lot of here at the top. And again, if you were to scroll through the list, you'd think about what have affected you. And I'm just sort of skimming through myself. And I'm not seeing... I suppose changes to work, maybe the current corona climate would have an impact. Arguments with spouses regarding child rearing, mortgage change of changed mortgage. Major change. I've got new responsibilities at work. The beginning stage formal changes. So again, you'd skip through the list and think about what has happened to you. To be honest, most of these, I'm quite an uneventful life really. Not that much going on. Changes sleeping. I'm getting less sleep with a toddler. House member eating habits change. I've been, well, since been locked down, I've been eating quite unhealthily. But I haven't been able to get my McDonald's fix either, so that's probably a big change. Holidays, minor violations, speeding ticket. I haven't got any tickets this year. So here we go. So in terms of personally, my stress score, we've got 36, 31, 30. So that's 96, 101, 117. I think roughly my figure is. So 117-ish, definitely less than 150. So if we were to look at my points on this scale, I'm relatively low risk. So 150 points or less means that I'm relatively low amount of life-changing factors that would be less likely or low susceptibility to stress-induced illness or health breakdown. Now, as you can see, the scales rate. So if I had over 150 to 300, I'm in the 50% chance of a major health breakdown in the next 2 years. Over 300, you've got about an 80% chance of, again, a health issue in the next 2 to 3 years. So this is the Holmes rate scale. Now I realise this one is not going to apply to a majority of you. As sort of 16, 17-year-olds, you're not going to deal with this. So what I have done is I've created a student-focused version of the stress test, and I've put sort of slightly different things on there that, in my head, would apply more to you. So again, that will be an attachment if you want to have a look at that and have a go and have a think about it. Again, it's not medically accurate. It's not I've kind of made it myself. So if it says that you're on a high level of stress and you're going to get ill in the next, don't focus on that, but think about, what are your causes of stress? What is causing you stress in a day-to-day sort of scenario? What is happening over the past year? Okay, so based on those two activities, one last thing really for you to do in your pack is to create a very short summary of your own of what the Holmes readjustment rated scale or how it measures stress and what it does. So you can create your own short summary on any way. It's not an official definition I'm looking for. It's just for you and your own benefit of how would you describe or define or explain the Holmes readjustment rating scale. It might even be an easy thing to do is while you're at home, maybe go and, how would you explain this to your mum or your dad or your brother or whoever you're living with at the moment? How would you explain the Holmes readjustment rating scale to them? And then think about how you'd explain it and then pop that into your packs. And our final part of this lesson. So you've got an assessment. Now there is an assessment at the very end of your pack. Now I realise that this current climate with the exams being cancelled, this is a slightly, it does feel slightly redundant. It doesn't feel necessary. But what I am going to say is that although summer exams are not taking place, there will be opportunities for you to resit potentially in January when we return after this back to college. You can resit them again in the summer next year. So you can do this exam paper. If you're not happy with how whatever way the government decide how grades are allocated and worked out and whatever goes on there, and you would like to sit this exam, and I imagine a lot of you will, it is worth practicing these questions. So the question you've got. Okay, so here is our example exam question. This is already in your pack. You've got this written out there. You can read it in your own time, but I will skim through it and obviously pick out a few things that I would do if this was in the real exam, and that's what we're thinking about it in that way. So we've got Mary. Mary was a shy only child, so that's one thing we've got, only child, so low support network, thinking about boundary attachment, and had a very small friendship circle. Again, that's support network. She experienced bullying in year 5 and that continued in secondary school. So bullying has a massive, again, wasn't really on those predictable, unpredictable life events, but bullying would definitely come under that unpredictable. You don't predict or plan to be bullied at school, so that would definitely be one of those sources of stress. So we know her self-image and self-esteem has been affected by the bullying. She was close to her mother and was devastated when she died when Mary was 18. So that's death of a family member, and particularly of a parent. She was married at 21, so that's a predictable life event there. To Bill when they have 3 children, so parenthood, another predictable life event. Bill was a paramedic and works different shifts every week, so that could be a source of stress, that unpredictability or unpredictable working pattern. She was a nursing home manager, but had to give up her job to look after the children, so that's a source of stress as well, losing your role, your responsibility issue, and obviously the financial change that would have come with it. She disappointed to leave her job. She had this job, it gave her self-esteem a boost, so we know that's going to have taken a dive again. And as the children got older, she took on a part-time job as an occupational therapist. So again, returning to work, changing job role, source of stress. And she may go to university to study for a degree. So again, going to university would be a predictable plan. You plan to do that. So that's again another predictable source of stress. But we now see that Mary and Bill are having financial or money and marital difficulties, financial and marital difficulties. Bill was spending lots of nights away, divorce is taking place, selling the house, again another source of stress. Oldest daughter leaving soon, so we've got a child leaving, so that empty nest syndrome may kick in. Mary started to drink, she's not sleeping, she's put on weight because of poor diet, not exercising. Her friendship circles reduced even more because of her lifestyle. She's withdrawn and depressed and has stopped taking care of her appearance and personal hygiene. So there's a lot here. And again, often these characters have very traumatic events taking place to them. So let's look at the question. So we've got identify one predictable and one unpredictable life event that Mary has experienced. There's loads in there we just flagged up, but predictable life events would be parenthood, marriage, getting a job, maybe career change. Unpredictable would be divorce, would be I suppose depression, the bullying. These would be unpredictable life events. 2 factors that can have an influence on Mary's development. Well, there's lots in here. So her self-esteem was being mentioned, the bullying, the death of her mother, the obviously the children leaving home, going to university. Though it's a stress, it's a positive one. It's a positive change in employment. These will be things that would affect her physical, emotional, social development. And then lastly, discuss Mary's emotional well-being in relation to the SRRS. That should probably be HRRS, which would be the Holmes readjustment scale. So that should be a H, not an S. But either way, hopefully it's correct in your pack. But the Holmes readjustment scale. So again, there's a lot of discussions there in relation to self-development, self-esteem, the stress factors, the things that would be a cause of stress. You could sort of talk about the idea that there's a lot on that list of the high scoring stress issues that would probably give Mary a higher score on the Holmes-Ray scale. This will mean that she's more likely to be in that 50 to 80% range of likely to develop long-term illness in the future. Okay, so again, have a think about those questions. Obviously, jot some ideas down in your pack. So this is, again, as I said, a very short overview of the Holmes-Ray readjustment scale, the major life events and changes that take place. Hopefully this has been helpful. If it hasn't, I'd go back, rewatch the video a little bit, email your teacher, read through the pack, read through the textbook, or a lot of teachers at the moment have Padlets and stuff that you can use. So have a look at those as well. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Hopefully this has been help, and if you have any questions, just speak to your teacher. Okay, thanks again. Take care.